On this episode, we discuss the expat pecking order that emerges when you divulge how many years you've lived here.
So no matter if you've been here 3 months, 3 years, 10 years, or 40 years, you'll find a lot to think about on this episode of the Bangkok Podcast.
Sawadee krap, and welcome to the Bangkok Podcast. My name is Greg Jorgensen, a Canadian who came to Thailand in 2001 to get away from random moose wandering into convenience stores, only to be forced to deal with random monitor lizards in Bangkok 7-Elevens.
In a way, I feel like moose and monitor lizards are similar in that they seem like prehistoric. Like moose do not seem like they're from the modern era.
No, if you see one up close and they're like 9 feet tall at their chin, you're like, oh my God, this is a dinosaur.
Yeah, I've seen those videos. You know, it's like when you see a moose with no context, you're like, oh, okay, it's kind of like a cow or whatever. But then when you see it like standing next to a car or like a human, you're like, holy shit.
Yeah. And then you see like, oh, it'll kick you. But then you realize, oh, it'll kick you. And also its hoof weighs 150 kilograms.
Yeah. It's like they're...
Crush your chest.
I just remember one, not like I know a lot about moose. This might even have been on Joe Rogan, but someone was referring to them as megafauna. And I'm like, that is so perfect because like we really don't have, like megafauna have been wiped out. Megafauna were like woolly mammoths and shit like that.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, this lizard in we talked about this in the bonus show, but the lizard in the 7-Eleven was also pretty spectacular.
No, that's right. Exactly. That's why they're similar. You know, what is a moose to Canada is a monitor lizard to Thai people.
True that.
All right. And I'm Ed Knuth, an American who came to Thailand on a 1-year teaching contract almost 20 years ago. Actually, what am I saying? 20 years ago. Really, more than 20 years ago. Fell in love with breaking open plastic wrapping, which seems to cover almost everything in Thailand. So I never left.
Nice.
It's fun. It's fun just ripping and tearing all the plastic. That's right. And a huge thanks to all of our patrons who support the show. Patrons who get a whole bunch of cool stuff, including our ad-free regular show a day early, behind-the-scenes photos and videos of our interviews, discounts on swag, which you can find on our website, and various other things that aren't available to regular listeners. But best of all, patrons also get an unscripted, uncensored bonus episode every week where we riff on current events and pretty much random topics. We just finished recording this week's bonus show, and we chatted about another bloody COVID wave. That sounds kind of British, man. We're not British, but I'll go with it. Okay. Another bloody COVID wave in Thailand, which seems like it might be more serious than the last one, which sucks. If it's proper or even safe to stick with any Songkran travel plans, the viral video of a monitor lizard in 7-Eleven that blew up on social media, and how sharing it on Facebook finally gave me my 5 minutes of fame on social media, which I normally don't participate in too much. Okay, to become a patron, head to bangkokpodcast.com/support.
I think that was our longest introduction ever.
Yeah.
Yes. All right, guys. Well, on this episode, we are going to be discussing a funny little quirk of living in Thailand as an expat, and that is the unspoken hierarchy that you subconsciously place yourself and others in. And it's a bit of a vague concept, but here's how I see how it goes. So you're at a party or an event and you meet someone. Almost immediately, the 3 questions come up. Number 1, where are you from? This establishes what basic cultural touchstones you have in common with your new friend. Number 2, what do you do? This classifies you into several expat strata. Are you a rich CEO or a lowly office worker? Do you teach scuba in Samui or do you slum it in a Khao San guest house? You know, you got to figure
No, I want you to stop right there. I just want to point out that Karl Marx pointed out that this is one of the flaws or weaknesses in capitalism, and that people always identify themselves based on their career. But other than that, you can go ahead.
Okay, thanks. We'll get into that later. And the third and final question, and that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. How long have you been here? Now, this is the big one because making a life in Bangkok ain't easy. Anyone can come here for a few years and then leave back home. But to stay here for 10, 20, 30, 40, or 50 years, that is a full house in the game of poker. That is a full-term life in Bangkok. And when you throw that down, boom, you are the grand master. So Hey, this was kind of your idea, and I think it's a really interesting thing to talk about. Where did it come from, and what do you think?
Well, first off, I love this topic. I've thought about it many times, but it was sparked by our interview we did yesterday with senior expat Joe Cummings. I don't want to talk too much about it because it's a upcoming future show, although it'll be soon. Joe Cummings is a famous expat. He wrote the original Lonely Planet for Thailand, but that's literally like 0.001% of the cool and interesting stuff he's done in his life.
Right.
And the long and short of it is he told us in the interview that he arrived in Thailand for the first time in 1977.
I was 2 years old.
Now, just to clarify what that means is that in the year 2000, 21 years ago, he had already been in Thailand longer than we have been in Thailand now.
Holy crap. Yeah, I never thought of that, dude. Oh, man.
It's insane.
Wow.
And so there's many sides to this coin. You think there's only two, but there's more.
Ooh.
Okay, because there's different ways to take this. One way to look at it is, Greg and I have each been here about 20 years, which and we have learned something. But at the same time, as all of our listeners know, we're not experts on Thailand. We're working on it. We're trying. But we make so many mistakes and like screw so many things up. And, our Thai, although I got to give Greg credit, he's working on it, it's getting better. You know what I'm saying? It's like, so even though we've been here 20 years, we realize in a way how little we know. But perhaps, and this is one of the other angles, maybe we've got some wisdom. So maybe we know more than we realize. Greg, do you think we've been too hard on ourselves? What do you think?
What is it, like the guy that was that Confucius who said like a wise man truly knows that he doesn't know anything or something like that?
That would be Socrates, but Confucius is a good guess.
How many thousands of years were they apart? That was sad. Anyway, well, yeah, I think that's a good summary of what you just said. But I kind of, to be honest with you, I kind of like throwing that trump card down when someone says, and how long have you been here? Like it goes around, oh, I've been here 3 months. Oh, I've been here 5 years, 6 years. And then I whip out my 20 years. Boom,
Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of like whipping out, your resume or like your job experience.
Or like throwing down your multiple doctorates in astrophysics or something. Like everyone's
that's right.
Be like, damn.
No, but that's another angle because obviously the time, it does matter. I mean, there's a huge difference. I mean, okay, the difference between me at 3 months and me at 2 years was astronomical.
Right. Well, that's an interesting concept because, I mean, it sort of mirrors how you grow up, right? Like the difference between a 3-year-old and a 6-year-old is huge.
Oh, absolutely.
But the difference between a 25-year-old and a 35-year-old there's a difference, but it's not that big of a difference.
True that. Maybe it's, so maybe it's not a Thai thing. It's just a getting older thing. It's weird though because on the other hand, speaking of Joe Cummings, but it's not just Joe. There just seem to be these wise old men, and in my case, it happens to be men that I've met, like who've just been here crazy long periods of time. And in my opinion, they do seem to have like wisdom about Thailand. Like they don't seem like they've been wasting their years or they haven't learned anything.
Right. I mean, it's just, I think a part of it is totally on us. It's just laziness. Like we get in this rut. We get in this career, comfortable family rut. And like someone like Joe, he's always traveling. He's always reading. He's always researching.
It's also part of his job. I mean, he literally is an expert on Thailand and Thai culture professionally. Like you and I do the podcast for fun and we like it. But I mean, it's literally his job. So, I mean, his job is to be an expert on Thailand. So, yeah, of course, he's still learning. So the difference is astronomical in terms of, when he talks about Thailand, besides the fact that he's fluent in Thai, and he was fluent in Thai like 30 years ago.
Right.
Like before we even got here, he was like translating Thai for a living. So it's like, it's fascinating the different experiences you can have have as an expat, because it's like, you and I think we know something, and that's why we have the podcast, and we certainly can help people, like listeners out there. Admit it, some of you guys, you've learned some helpful shit. So it's like, so even though I feel like I should know way more and my Thai should be way better, like we are providing somewhat of a service here, right? But then when you and I sit down with, like I would say, I would say Dan from Smiling Albino. He would be one example, and then of course Joe. Joe, who wrote the first Lonely Planet on Thailand, like not before we were born, but I mean like literally 30 years ago, 40 years ago.
Right.
It's just ridiculous. There is a drastic difference between us and him and those guys. There are these like elite, I don't know what to call them. They're like they're like the Jedi.
The super expats.
Seriously. They're the super expats.
The mega expat, like the megafauna.
That's right. Oh, yeah, that's right. But man, it's like when I sit down and talk to him about Thailand or Thai language, or I don't even know how to describe it. Like it really is like a Yoda. You're sitting at like the feet of someone who knows so much more than you. So what have we been doing for 20 years, Craig?
You are the Padawan. Well, let me ask you this. And I mean, I'm not saying we've peaked or plateaued and the life after X has been a waste, but at what point, how many years in Thailand do you think that you have sort of peaked in your general knowledge? Like that you like,
well, it's funny that, that's
you know
a strange, well, that's a strange meta question, dude, because, the Bangkok podcast really changed it for me. So the meta answer is I definitely had peaked 3 years ago or 4 years ago, but you inviting me on the podcast and me sticking around, I feel now I'm at my peak. I'm at my peak Thai knowledge, but it's because of the podcast.
Oh, okay. That's good to know.
Yeah. I mean, it's really due to you or the fact that the podcast has worked out. In the first 3 years I was here, I dated around a lot. And eventually I met the woman who I married, and then that raises the stakes of my commitment to Thailand. And I kept learning more about Thailand, learning about her family, where she was from, and I still feel like I'm peaking, I'm learning, I'm going up. But I got to be honest. And the way I think about it is I feel like around 10 or 11 or 12 years, I really do think I plateaued. But for me, like year 11 to 17, I'm like, I don't know what I learned about Thailand that I didn't already know. My Thai didn't improve.
Right.
I don't remember traveling to a new place. I'm really bad about that. Like I was just in my groove. We've talked about the city. I'm in my groove. So it wasn't like I was unhappy, but I did not expand my knowledge of Thai culture, Thai history until you asked me to be on the podcast. And then I've at least tried to up my game.
Interesting. That's interesting because I think that I think whether it comes to exploring Bangkok, learning Thai, or learning more about Thai culture, I think you hit these plateaus every once in a while, and it's like, okay, I'm going to take Thai lessons, and then you get to a level where you're like, oh, I've definitely improved. That's good enough for now. And then you go for a while, and nothing improves, and then something happens. You move out of Bangkok, or you meet a new girlfriend.
It does seem to be, this is the way I think about this is I think it's pretty random and circumstantial. So to be honest, I don't blame us, because I think it's just, like for example, for me, the podcast was just a circumstance that pushed me to improve my knowledge of Thailand and try to remember what it was like to be a first timer. And I think getting married, or as you pointed out, if you change jobs or if you move to a new location, it makes it more live and like more vibrant. So I don't think it's really our fault. I think it's normal to plateau. I got to be honest with you, dude. Around 18 months to 2 years, I had game. I was out, dude.
You're Mr. Bangkok.
I was proud of myself, man. It's like I mean, my Thai was basically where it's at right now. I mean, I think I've probably expanded my vocabulary a little bit, and obviously I know some things, but I'm not joking. Like I was serious about Thai in the beginning, and I was good. I was ahead of the curve.
Right.
And then I remember reading a couple Thai history books, and I was just like, I really felt
killing it.
I really felt like I was like the model expat.
Well, I think by about, I'd say 10 to 12 years, you really sort of plateau. I think
you're
that's
done. I think that's
a fair assessment.
That's what I mean. Like around 10 or 12 years is actually when it's ironic, because it's when I realized in my head, I'm sure to people other than me, it was obvious after 3 or 4 years, like, dude, you're never going to leave.
Right.
But I'm talking about me. I'm talking about self-awareness, which I don't have or don't have much of, So around 10, 11 years, I was like, oh my God, I might stay in Thailand. Like I might not leave next year.
Right.
Honestly, for the first 10 years, when people asked me, when are you coming home? I was like, I'm thinking next year.
Right. It's that
You know,
psychological number, like 10 years. Like that's
it just became
watershed.
it just became so obvious. I'm sure other people had already seen it already, but by 10 or 11 I was like, oh my God, like I might be a lifer.
Right.
And I stopped thinking about what am I going to do next year back home, and where am I going to work? Because honestly, for my first 10 years here, I was like, this is probably going to be my last year.
Right. And what am I going to do when I go back home? That just becomes a bigger and bigger question mark the longer.
But then something changed around 10, 11. I woke up. I got a modicum of self-awareness, and I'm like, oh my God, like I might be staying here.
Well, I think you've got to be responsible for kicking yourself out of that comfortable rut that you
let me make my point though. The irony is, during the first 10 years here, where I thought I might leave the next year, I was really motivated to like learn more Thai, learn Thai history, read this book, like travel here. Oh, I've never been like to Udon. Everyone talks about Udon. I've never been there. I was really motivated. But then like when I realized, oh shit, I'm a lifer. Then I just go back to being lazy. It's like no, it's like no one knows anything about their hometown. Like you were telling me, you don't know shit about Calgary.
I don't know anything about Calgary. Who cares about Calgary? I lived there my whole life. But so it's interesting. So when you get comfortable enough to accept the fact that you are going to be here forever, I'm obviously comfortable enough.
That's right.
That I don't need to learn anything else.
Well, it's like local New Yorkers. They don't know shit about New York. They don't go to the Statue of Liberty. They don't do that. People like Parisians, they're not like, oh, cool, I can go to the Eiffel Tower this weekend.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And but the corollary of that is that you and I know a lot more about Bangkok than a lot of Thai people that we've talked to.
Well, that's it. And I'm glad that you said that. And it's, again, it's because it's their home. It's like there's something about your home which is just like it's normal or it's whatever. So this happens to me many times with my students where I'm like, hey, have you ever been here? Or do you know about this place? Or, and they're like, no, what are you talking about? I'm like, there's a really cool section of Bangkok. There's this, there's that. But they're like, Bangkok sucks.
Right.
It's exactly. Like you always think like where you live is not special. Like when you look at tourists, you're like, why are you coming here?
Well, let me tell you, when I throw down that 20-year card and become like the king of the room, like, oh, that guy's been here 20 years.
Probably king of the room.
Maybe until Joe walks in and I've been here 45 years, and you're like, okay, and then you're the Padawan again, which is great. But what I'm scared of, if I said I've been here 20 years and everyone went ooh, and then one guy goes, okay, so what does 20-year Greg, like what more do you know than 15-year Greg knew, And my answer would be like, actually not a hell of a lot.
Well, I'm honest, I think that, the podcast has helped us both in terms of upping our game, because we have to, but what that whole point that raised, what this reminds me of?
What?
Back in the day when I was younger and I did martial arts and stuff, I noticed that in the organization, there's like a belt system, right? And it's very traditional. It's very serious, right? And in general, it was like merit based. It's like you really had to earn it. It was not a joke. So, to me, it was like real. It was like if you got this belt, if you were like a second degree brown belt, it's like it meant you were like badass. But after over time, I noticed something funny. It's that they were just like long timers, like people training for a really long time, members of the club for a really long time. And then they would just get promoted.
Well, promoted just on the time they put into it.
Right. I realized there was, and it was interesting because there was a genuine, true meritocratic thing that was no joke. But then there was this kind of like unspoken, understood thing, like, well, he's been here 20 years,
right.
And so
that's interesting.
So you get your second degree brown belt, and everyone kind of knows, everyone loves the guy, he's the old timer, but everyone knows he's not really as good as like younger people.
He could probably get his ass beat by like a really good younger student.
That's right. So it's like this. It's like the question is, what value do the years have? Like you can always put the card down, the 20-year, but is it the polite?
That's
let's
interesting.
Honor your time. Let's honor your time.
I've been to a lot of parties where I throw down the 20-year card and everyone's like, ooh. And then another guy is like, oh yeah, okay, that's great. How long have you been here? Oh, I've been here 4 years. Oh, great. And he speaks Thai fluently. And
that's
he
exactly
reads
right.
and writes Thai.
That's right. Or he starts talking about like some island and you're like, oh shit, I've never been there.
Heard of that. Oh, you go to Thai University too. And oh, cool. And you're a member of this charity. Oh, that's cool. So, I mean.
That's right.
So
That's right.
that's when my 20-year card becomes like, I'll just take this back, put it back in my wallet with my Weight Watchers cards.
Right, your 20-year card shrivels up a little bit. But the weird thing is, I do think wisdom comes with time. But you're right; it's really not linear. Like there are people who've been here 4 years that they could probably crush us, in terms of their knowledge of Thailand, Thai history, whatever. So for me, I've got two saving graces. One is the podcast had to keep me sharp and it got me more engaged into Thai stuff instead of being lazy once I realized I'm probably going to live here for a long time, But the other thing is, I do feel just navigating the city, talking to Thai people, being able to read situations, I feel like I have developed some just kind of wisdom about how Thailand works. I don't know. Do you feel
like
that
sort
way?
of osmotic, an osmotic absorption of
Yeah,
what's
because it's my
around you.
daily. Yeah, so now it's 20 years. I'm getting up, going out, doing this, going to the bank, going to the tax office, going to the university, and I'm just getting taxi drivers and motorbike riders, and I'm buying this at the store and going to the fruit cellar, and I'm just interacting with Thais. So now I'm into the thousands of hours of doing it that I just feel like I understand what's going on. Like,
Right.
it's just like when I see someone or something, or I'm interacting with this person, even though I make mistakes, when I'm just running around Bangkok, living my life, I feel like I get it. And whereas like, there's larger things, of course, I don't understand. Why does the Thai government do this? Or why can't we solve that problem? But that's not personal confusion. That's like an intellectual problem. Like,
Right.
how come Thailand can never have real democracy? That's not personally troubling. It's an intellectual problem.
Yeah.
But I feel that when I think of myself during earlier years, I just remember being confused and anxious, and not, I had fun, but it's like you go into a bank and it's nerve wracking.
Yeah, I was really nervous to go into a Thai food court and use like the coupons. That used to like really intimidate me.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And now, even though I make mistakes, so it's like, I don't know, it's hard to make the point I'm trying to make. It's just that I'm just less anxious. I'm just less stressed out. I've just been there, done that so many times.
But my big takeaway from this is that just like that 20-year card is a very valuable card, and I'm proud of it. But it's also a sort of a reminder that just being here 20 years is maybe not enough to be able to brag about being here for 20 years. Like, you got to act like it. You've got to walk the walk, talk the talk, not walk the talk like Thai people say, which is one of my big pet peeves, but I digress. But like I should be doing more. I should be pushing myself to work towards what Joe Cummings has accomplished when he was here 20 years.
True that. I mean, yeah, I agree. And like I said, thank God for the podcast. Thank you. Thank our listeners. I'm around the 3-year mark. We didn't do a 3-year show for me, Greg. Come on.
Oh, I'm sorry, man.
I deserve a 3-year show.
We'll do a private show.
No, seriously, it's been. The simple truth is, I enjoy doing the show, and I feel like I'm good enough. But it's not like I do. It's not like I keep doing the show because I'm like, wow, I'm really talented at this. This is like my calling. It's not like that. Like I do it because I do it because it helps me learn about Thailand, and like our desire to teach stuff, or not teach, but you know what I mean, to point stuff out to expats and tourists, and then
discuss,
keeping up with the
discover, and digest.
Right, keeping up with the news, news of the weird, Thai trivia. It's really what keeps me here, because I think it keeps me from stagnating as an expat.
Yeah, that's the secret too. You gotta find a way to keep yourself from stagnating, because, like I said, the 20-year card is great, or whatever it is, the 30-year card, the 15-year card is good, but what else is there? You know what I'm thinking? Keep thinking of. I keep coming back to this metaphor about how I describe being an English teacher here. Like 30 years ago, you could go anywhere in the world and someone would say, "What can you do?" And you say, "I speak English." And they go, "Oh, wow. Okay, here's a teaching position at this school," or something like that. Now you go anywhere in the world and they say, "What can you do?" And you say, "I speak English." And they're like, "Everyone speaks English. What else can you do?"
Can you program? Can you program in C++? Like that's that's what really matters.
That's right. So you got to kind of constantly keep pushing yourself to discover new things, whatever it is. It could be, finding new restaurants in a new neighborhood, or doing a podcast, or learning to read better, or something like that. But yeah, I think what I've sort of distilled it down for me in my own sort of analytics of the show is that it's really important to keep pushing yourself, because just sitting back and collecting glory on that simple time of how long you've been here is not enough.
So my final question to you before we wrap up will be, and I have a feeling yours is going to be a longer time than mine, but I know the expat that I've met who gave me the longest number of years. So I say, like, how long have you been here? Boom. So I have a number. I'm guessing I feel like you're much more of a connector, and I can't remember exactly how long Colonel Johnny Thorts has been here. Now, we both know Joe. You knew him better than I did. And Joe said he came in 1977, so that's 23 years plus 21, so that's 43. So I met one person since I've been in Thailand who I asked, how long you've been in Thailand, and boom, they gave me a number bigger than 43. No,
Joe's the longest serving resident.
For real?
Expat. Yeah.
Is that true?
Wow. I can't think of anyone else. No.
I'm proud of this, because I would have assumed you just knew some crazy old timer like, I got here in 1917. You know what I mean?
The year of the Great War. Yeah.
So this is an interesting little tidbit. So when I got married, I was raised Catholic. Listeners have probably figured out I'm not very Catholic anymore. But I was raised Catholic, and I wanted to get married in the church I grew up in. It not only mattered to my family, but I had such a history there. So Catholics have to do something called pre-Cana, which is you can't get married unless they teach you a class about like marriage and stuff like that. So my fiance and I, we went to a Catholic church in Bangkok, and this priest is an older Farong, and he's like, "How long have you been here?" And at that point, I think it was 6 years, and I'm feeling pretty good about that. I'm like,
right.
6, I'm not some 6 months loser. I'm like, 6 years, and he's like, oh, and he's like, so I'm being polite, and I'm like, so how long have you been in Thailand?
Where are you from? What do you do? I know that.
Right. How many years you been in Thailand? And he goes, 52.
Wow. 52 years.
That's it. That's the biggest number I've heard.
Wow. It's amazing. Also, nothing quite like getting relationship advice from a guy who's contractually obliged with God to not be in any relationships. So, but I digress.
That is so true. Yeah. Let's not get into that whole shoot. But yes, good. I would say that would be a valid point.
Well, I think what we can take away from this is that it's always important, nay necessary, to always find new outlets of creativity, of learning, of pushing yourself to do something, because just being here probably ain't enough anymore to have bragging rights. You got to do something else.
So the theme of the show, our advice is earn your years.
Right. You can't do a podcast, though. We got that already. We done that already.
If you're a 12-year guy, you better know more than a 9-year guy. That's all I'm saying. If you're a 3-year guy, you better stand up and represent 3-year guys.
That's right. Earn your years. Nice. We got to get
earn your years.
So all right, let's get into some love, loathe, or live with, where one of us picks a particular aspect of life in Bangkok, which we then discuss and decide if it's something we love about living here, loathe about living here, or have come to accept as just something that we have to learn to live with no matter how we feel about it. This week it is my turn. I think I asked Evo this years ago, but I'm going to ask you because I forgot what Evo said. But what do you think of when you go into a bathroom, do your thing, wash your hands, and you turn around to look for a paper towel, and there is no paper towels. There is no dryers. But what there is a roll of toilet paper on the wall.
Yeah, it's horrible. I mean, this is such a funny, weird quirk of culture. So this relates a little bit, actually, to something we talked about last night with Joe Cummings about representation of Asia in cinema, and how having like a toilet roll on the table. It seems for a Westerner, we would never put a roll of toilet paper on like the dinner table, but that's just such an Asian thing,
right?
And so in a way, this is similar in that in the States, you would never like be like wash your hands in a wash basin, and then there's like a roll of toilet paper there, because toilet paper is like thin, and
as soon as you touch it, it disappears in wetness. Yeah.
So toilet paper is just way overused. Like, what's up with paper products in this country? It's like there's less segmentation. It's like the toilet paper, they've just decided, okay, that's the platonic ideal of paper. Like the toilet paper, that's the perfect form of paper, and so they use the toilet paper for everything.
Yeah, no, I'm a loathe on this one. I mean, it's completely useless. Like you got to get off, you got to pull out half a tree of the stuff to do anything, and then oftentimes because I've got a shaved head and I got stubble, little sticks to my face and my head, and it's just like if I wash my face or something.
Thailand's got a paper product problem. And if we weren't suffering through like a deathly pandemic or like a military government or about 1,000 other problems, maybe we can get to the paper product problem.
Solve the big ones first.
The bottom line is there's just paper products are not used properly in this country. It's like there's no proper napkins, and then there's no proper like towels as opposed to toilet paper. It's like toilet paper has just expanded its role in Thailand like way beyond what's appropriate.
Interesting. All right, cool. I'm a loathe on that.
Yeah, I'm a loathe. I'm with you. Alrighty. A final thanks to our patrons who support the show. Patrons get a ton of cool perks and the warm, fuzzy feeling knowing that they're helping support the show. Find out more by clicking support on our website and connect with us online, or at least with Greg. We're Bangkok Podcast on social media, bangkokpodcast.com on the web, or simply bangkokpodcast@gmail.com. We love hearing from our listeners and always reply to our messages.
Yeah, you can also listen to each episode on the YouTube. You can send us a voicemail on the line, and we'll feature that on the show if you do. Or you can even reach out to me directly on Twitter, where I am BKK Greg. So thanks for listening, everyone. Take care out there in the third wave, and we'll see you back here next week.
For sure, we'll be here. Hello, hello, hello. Boom, diddy boom.
This is your captain speaking. You know what I love is the air traffic controller. Like when I was a kid, I used to pretend it just sounds so cool. Like Boeing 422 Heavy, proceed to 322 North and drop 1,000.
Yeah, wait, what's that? What is that movie with Nicolas Cage?
You're thinking of Pushing Tin with Billy Bob Thornton and John Cusack.
That's right, John Cusack. Pushing Tin. That movie was pretty good.
Never seen it.
Oh, Pushing Tin. God, I don't even remember that name, but that's definitely the movie. That's a blast from the past.
That's a deep cut. That's how nerdy I am. I've never even seen it, and I remember the title and who starred in it.
God, yeah, shit, dude. There are so many movies out there. One of the weirder things is when, how there's a joke that eventually everyone gets their movie. Like there's a movie for like shipping captains, like fucking Captain Phillips. They get their movies.
Air traffic controllers.
And this is like the air traffic control movie. They get their movie.
Have they made a movie about podcasters?
Well, that's what I'm saying. Maybe we have their movie about expat podcasters. That's pretty specific.